You going to break a hip, old man?" That was the first thing he heard when he walked in. They didn't see a threat, just a flannel shirt and a face that looked like it came with grandkids. They offered him a chair. He didn't take it. They offered him advice. He didn't need it. They offered him laughs. He gave them silence. And then he moved. Just once. No fists, no noise, just precision. By the time they blinked, someone was already on the mat, breath knocked out and ego shattered. The belts around their waists suddenly felt decorative. And the man they mocked? He wasn't lost. He was exactly where he needed to be, to remind them what respect feels like, right before it hits you in the chest. He didn't look like trouble. Frank Malone, 63, walked into the gym like he was looking for someone to pick up. Worn boots, soft flannel, a coffee stain on the left sleeve. If you blinked, you'd miss him. Just another quiet old man leaning on the wall, hands in his pockets, watching. The kids were kicking and yelling. Parents scrolled on their phones. No one paid him much attention. One mom whispered, "Maybe he's someone's granddad, waiting for his ride." Another shrugged, "Or maybe he's lost. Poor guy." But Frank wasn't lost. He was still. Too still. The kind of stillness that doesn't come from age. It comes from discipline. Years of it. His eyes didn't dart like someone unsure. They scanned, soft but steady, like he was reading the room. Calculating. Not judging. Just aware. Behind him, taped to his wallet, was a photo. Worn edges, a dusty desert. 4 men in uniform. One of them smiling like hell. You wouldn't know by looking. But Frank had worn a uniform too. He just didn't need it to prove anything anymore. Frank stood by the entrance like a coat rack no one needed. No name tag, no gym bag, just presence. Inside, the black belts were goofing off between drills. Young, loud, loose. Tyler, the loudest of them all, was telling some half-funny story about how real fighters don't need warm-ups. Frank didn't flinch. He watched with a calm you couldn't fake. A teen nearby bumped into him. Frank stepped back, just an inch, without missing a beat. His hand didn't reach out. His body didn't sway. It was controlled, instinctive, like he'd been moving around chaos his whole life. Noah, a quiet 14-year-old on the bench, noticed. He squinted. "Mom, he moved weird," he whispered. His mom barely looked up from her phone. "He's just old, honey." But Noah kept staring. A quick motion caught Frank's attention, a sloppy leg sweep on the mat. Frank's eyes narrowed, just a little. He was watching angles, balance, mistakes. Then, a flash of silver. He reached casually to adjust his sleeve, revealing a thin scar running across his forearm. Long, pale, surgical, he pulled the fabric down like it meant nothing. But to anyone paying attention, it said everything. Tyler cracked another joke, louder this time. "Hey, Gramps, you looking for bingo or blood pressure class?" Laughter. Frank blinked, but his eyes never laughed back. Tyler's voice cut through the gym like bad radio. "Come on, old-timer. Bet you had some sick moves back in Nam, right?" His buddies cracked up, loud and careless, the kind of laugh that needs an audience to survive. Frank didn't react. No smile, no scowl. He just looked down at the floor like he was counting breaths. Tyler wasn't done. He strutted closer, wiping fake sweat with the back of his hand. "Tell you what," he said, tossing a wink to his crew. "How about a demo? One move, we'll even go easy on you." The offer was sugar-coated in disrespect, and Frank heard every grain. A few parents chuckled nervously. One mom whispered, "This doesn't feel right." Her husband replied without looking up, "Let them learn." Frank lifted his head, just slightly. His eyes met Tyler's for the first time, and something shifted. Not in the room, in the air. Tyler's smirk faltered. Just for a beat. Frank didn't answer. He didn't need to, because silence, when it's earned, is louder than anything. And Tyler? He had no idea what he'd just invited onto the mat. Frank didn't speak, didn't blink, but something about the way he looked at Tyler, it wasn't threat, it was measurement, like a man checking wind speed before pulling a trigger. Tyler clapped once, fake friendly. "All right, let's see those golden years in action, huh?" He stepped back and patted the mat like a game show host. Frank adjusted his footing. Just a soft shift of weight, like he was setting down roots. One boot heel clicked faintly against the floor. Sharp, clean, final. A few kids giggled, then stopped. Parents sat up straighter. Even Master Ortega, the gym instructor, turned his head, eyebrows narrowing. Frank didn't walk onto the mat. He just stood there. Still. But it wasn't passive. It was readiness. Old bones, sure. But everything else? Coiled. Quiet. Watching. Tyler raised his arms, bounced lightly on his feet. Frank? He didn't move, but the room did. Subtly, uncomfortably, as if everyone suddenly realized they might have just asked the wrong man the wrong question, in the wrong place. Tyler kept bouncing like a boxer on TV, light on his feet, loose arms, all confidence and no caution. Frank? Still as a tree. Except his left hand brushed his sleeve. Just a twitch, like brushing away dust. But it revealed a glimpse of something pale and jagged beneath the cuff. A scar. Long, thin, old, clean, military clean. Tyler missed it, but someone didn't. From the benches, Noah leaned forward, his eyes fixed. "Did you see that?" he whispered. No one answered. Tyler laughed again, too loud this time. "Don't be scared, old man. I said we'd take it easy." Frank raised his eyes, not in anger, in awareness. He stepped forward, just once, 1 foot. The sound of his boot hitting the edge of the mat was soft but sharp, like the click of a safety being turned off. Suddenly, no one was laughing. No one was even shifting in their seats. Tyler blinked. A tiny crease formed between his eyebrows. Frank took one more step, balanced, grounded. No pose, no guard. But in that moment, even the room seemed to brace itself, because now he was on the mat. Tyler grinned like a kid who thought he was still in control. He took a slow step forward, arms wide, voice playful. "All right, Gramps, just a little fun, yeah? I'll go light." Frank didn't answer, didn't move. Tyler faked a jab, half speed, for show. Frank didn't block, didn't flinch. He simply wasn't there anymore. One subtle pivot, one drop of the shoulder, and Tyler's hand sliced through open air. The gym gasped, quietly. Not from violence, but because something was wrong, or rather something was too right. Tyler reset, laughing. But it wasn't full anymore. Okay, he said, rubbing his jaw. "Guess you still got some juice?" Frank's feet never left their place, but his weight shifted again, gentle, controlled. His arms remained loose, hanging at his sides. No guard, no stance, just presence. Master Ortega narrowed his eyes. Noah whispered, "He didn't even touch him." His mom finally looked up from her phone. In the far corner, a retired Marine vet named Hank folded his arms, his gaze locked on Frank. And he muttered, almost to himself, "That's not gym movement. That's field movement." And suddenly, everyone started watching, differently. Tyler took 2 steps back, trying to cover the moment. He rolled his shoulders like it didn't bother him, but the grin was wearing thin, real thin. He clapped his hands. "Okay, let's go again. Seriously this time." Frank didn't respond. He simply pivoted, soft, exact, like his feet already knew where Tyler would move next. Tyler came in with more speed. A grab for the wrist, missed. Again. Frank had turned just enough. No more, no less, not showy, not flashy, just gone. And Tyler nearly stumbled. Again. The gym wasn't laughing now. The black belts were watching but not cheering. The parents were frozen. Noah sat forward, elbows on his knees, eyes wide. Master Ortega stood without realizing it. His arms were crossed, his jaw clenched. He'd seen confidence before, but this was calculation. Hank, the Marine vet, leaned closer to the edge of his bench. "He's not avoiding," he muttered. "He's teaching, without saying a word." Tyler turned fast, cheeks burning. "Don't just stand there," he barked. Frank didn't flinch, didn't blink. He just waited. And in that pause, the gym realized something terrifying. He wasn't trying to win. He was trying not to break anyone. Tyler huffed, pacing like a dog trying to prove it's still in charge. "Say something," he snapped. "You think you're better than us?" Frank stayed quiet. Then finally, a voice. Calm, low, steady. "Your elbows open." Just that. 5 words. No tone, no judgment. Just truth. Tyler squinted. "What?" Frank didn't repeat it. He just nodded, once, toward Tyler's stance. Marcus, one of the younger black belts, leaned closer. Then, half curious, half sarcastic, he tried it. A quick twist, a little shift. Tyler's footing gave out like someone yanked the rug from under him. Bam! He hit the mat hard. Gasps, laughter. But this time, It wasn't at Frank. It was because of him. Tyler sat up red-faced, scrambling to his feet. "That was lucky," he snapped, but his voice cracked on the word lucky. The parents didn't smile. They stared. Master Ortega's lips parted slightly, not from shock, from recognition. Frank stepped back to the edge of the mat, hands behind his back, boots planted, unshaken. He'd said one sentence, and he'd just shifted the entire room. Tyler stood up fast, brushing off his gi like dusting off shame. His face was flushed, jaw tight, but his eyes, they kept flicking toward Frank, not in challenge, in hesitation. Frank didn't move, didn't gloat. He was already back at the wall, arms folded behind his back like a soldier in parade rest. The gym buzzed, but quieter now. The black belts weren't laughing. The parents weren't whispering. They were watching. Noah leaned to his mom, wide-eyed. He only said one thing, and Tyler hit the mat. His mom didn't answer, but she was staring too, like the rest of them. Marcus looked down at his own hands, almost like he'd done something wrong. He hadn't meant to embarrass Tyler. He'd just listened. Master Ortega took a step forward, still silent, still processing. But there was something in his posture now. Respect, maybe, or recognition. At the far end, Hank, the Marine vet, nodded slowly. "That wasn't luck," he said under his breath. "That was timing. Trained timing." Tyler backed away from the center of the mat, slower this time. The fight wasn't over, but the room had already changed sides. Frank shifted his weight again. Subtle. Almost nothing. But to someone watching closely, it was a stance. A ready one. He adjusted his sleeve, just enough to hide the scar, but not before Hank saw it. The old Marine leaned forward on the bench, cane tapping the floor once. "Scar like that," he muttered. "Wasn't from barbed wire." His words hung in the air, heavy, unwelcome. Noah turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" Hank didn't answer right away. His eyes were still locked on Frank. On the mat, Tyler was pacing, talking tough again, but now it sounded hollow. Frank, meanwhile, watched in stillness, not staring, reading. Every stance, every shift of weight, every move Tyler made was being recorded in Frank's mind. Master Ortega finally spoke, soft and low. "I've seen that kind of movement," he said. "Not in tournaments. In footage. Training tapes. Years ago." One of the parents, former National Guard, glanced over. "I don't think he's here to win," he said. "He's here to correct." Frank folded his arms. His boots never moved. But the space around him? It felt smaller now, tighter, like the calm before a storm that already knows where it's going to land. Tyler tried to get the room back. He clapped his hands again, louder this time, forcing a grin. "All right then. Old man wants to play mind games. Fine, let's make it physical." But no one laughed now, not even his own crew. He stepped forward, more aggressive this time, shoulders high, chest puffed. A swing came in fast. Sharp, showy, almost enough to impress someone. Frank didn't block. He leaned, barely, and Tyler's fist cut nothing but air again. Tyler stumbled past him. Frank didn't follow, didn't counter. He just turned, slow and precise, to face him again. Tyler spun back around, breathing harder now. He barked a laugh, but it didn't land. "You afraid to hit me?" he snapped. Frank didn't blink. Behind him, Master Ortega watched closely. His arms folded, his brow furrowed. He knew what Tyler didn't yet. This wasn't restraint from fear. It was control. Deep, trained control. Tyler charged again, sloppy this time. More frustration than form. Frank didn't move. And that, somehow, rattled Tyler worse than a punch ever could. No one said it out loud, but they all saw it. Tyler was no longer in charge of the fight. Frank was, and he hadn't even raised a hand. Tyler adjusted his belt like that would fix the cracks in his pride. He wasn't smiling anymore. Not really. Frank remained still, boots planted, shoulders relaxed. He didn't even look winded. Didn't even look interested. Tyler tried again. This time a leg sweep. Faster, sloppier. Frank pivoted. Just enough. No wasted motion. Tyler's momentum threw him off. He caught himself, barely, and stood up red-faced. And that's when Hank, still seated in the back, spoke. Not loud, not angry, just clear. "He's not fighting you, son. He's sparing you." The room froze. Tyler's head jerked toward him. "What?" But Hank didn't answer. Didn't need to, because now others were remembering the scar, the silence, the precision. Master Ortega didn't look away from Frank. His jaw was clenched. His eyes were starting to understand. And Tyler was breathing harder than he should have. He opened his mouth like he wanted to bark back, but there was nothing left to bark. Because deep down, he felt it now. Not pain, not defeat, but the weight of being seen by someone who's been somewhere darker. Frank took a step to the left. That's it. One small step. No noise, no speed, no drama, but somehow the air moved with him. Tyler shuffled his feet in response like he was trying to reset, but he was reacting, not attacking, not leading. The gym grew quieter, not because someone called for silence, but because people were starting to understand. Frank wasn't preparing for the fight. He was the fight. A mother in the back slowly put her phone down. A teenage student nudged her friend and whispered, "He didn't even touch him yet, but I'm scared." Noah didn't blink. His eyes were locked on Frank's boots. Even he could tell, every time they moved, it wasn't by chance. Master Ortega stood now, arms crossed tight. He didn't speak, but his eyes followed Frank like a man watching something he couldn't unsee. Tyler tried another step in, but it was hesitant, half-hearted, shaky. And Frank? He didn't flinch, he just watched. Calm as still water, but everyone could feel it now. That stillness wasn't peace, it was pressure. Tyler was breathing too loud now. He wiped sweat from his forehead, trying to look casual. It didn't work. He took a slow step forward, fists half raised, but his eyes kept flicking to Frank's. And that was the mistake. Because Frank's eyes didn't blink, didn't wander, didn't judge. They measured. That kind of stare doesn't come from ego, it comes from experience, the kind earned in places without mats or rules. Tyler hesitated mid-step. The silence in the gym deepened. Even the smallest kids had stopped whispering. Noah's hand clutched the bench. He leaned forward, whispering under his breath, "He's not waiting to move. He's waiting for Tyler to break." Across the room, Hank exhaled slowly. "That's the stare of the man who's already won," he said, just loud enough for a few to hear. Tyler took another step, forced this time. But Frank tilted his head, just a hair. And Tyler froze. It wasn't fear in his face. Not yet. It was the realization that fear was only one move away. Tyler circled again, slower now. His steps no longer cocky, just cautious. He was watching Frank's hands, but he should have been watching his balance. Frank shifted. Not a lunge, not a strike, just a forward step, fluid and light. His right hand rose, open, calm, and placed 2 fingers, gently, on Tyler's wrist as he stepped in. That was it. Tyler, mid-motion, twisted from the contact. His foot caught nothing. His shoulder dipped. And in a blink, he was on one knee, scrambling to recover. No force, no violence, just precision. The gym gasped, not loudly, but sharply, like everyone forgot how to breathe at the same time. Tyler stood back up, eyes wide now. He opened his mouth to say something, but didn't. Frank lowered his hand again, like nothing had happened. But something had. Power had shifted. Fully. Openly. There was no question now. Tyler knew it. The room knew it. Even the silence seemed to lean toward Frank now. And for the first time it felt like Tyler wasn't in a fight. He was in a lesson. Tyler stepped back, hands up, chest heaving. But it wasn't from exhaustion. It was confusion. Embarrassment. A quiet panic. Frank hadn't even grunted, hadn't raised his voice, hadn't tried, and somehow he'd made Tyler look like an amateur, without breaking a sweat. At the benches, heads turned. Parents whispered, but the tone had shifted. They weren't questioning Frank anymore. They were studying him, trying to figure out what he really was. A teenage girl in the back leaned toward her dad. Was he in the military or something? Her father didn't answer, but his eyes narrowed in recognition. Master Ortega kept his arms crossed, his jaw locked. He'd taught this gym for over 2 decades, but he'd never seen movement like that. Not here, not in any tournament. And Tyler? He wiped his hands on his pants, stalled, searching for words that wouldn't come. Then he did what every fighter does when pride outweighs logic. He forced another attack, a fast jab, a sweeping low kick. Frank stepped aside, not dodging, letting it pass, and the message was clear. "You're not my enemy, you're my student, whether you like it or not." Tyler stumbled again, Caught nothing but air, no resistance, no contact. It was like fighting smoke, only this smoke watched you while you swung. He turned fast, fists clenched tighter than before, but Frank was already standing where he needed to be. Balanced, centered, like the earth had shifted beneath Tyler's shoes. The crowd didn't cheer. They couldn't. Something about what they were watching felt wrong to applaud. Too real, too precise. Hank, the retired Marine, leaned forward again. His cane tapped once against the wooden floor. "That's not sport," he said. "That's someone trained to end things. Fast, quiet, no mess." A woman near him whispered, "You think he's Special Forces?" Hank didn't answer, but the silence behind his breath did. On the mat, Tyler hesitated, not from pain, from something worse, uncertainty. Frank never chased, never pressed. He simply stood, like he'd been standing in rooms like this his entire life, where no one clapped and no one walked away the same. And in that silence, a few people realized the man they laughed at had already left a mark, without ever leaving one on Tyler. Tyler snapped. No more tactics, no more control, just heat. With a growl, he launched, full speed, into a spinning heel kick. It wasn't pretty, but it was dangerous. People flinched. Even Master Ortega's hand twitched, ready to step in, but he didn't need to. Because Frank moved. Not far, not fast, just enough. A soft pivot, a shift of hips. His right foot turned like he'd practiced it 10,000 times. Because he had. And Tyler's leg, mid-spin, met nothing but space. He landed off balance, slipped, hit the mat with a heavy thud. Silence. Frank stood above him. Didn't gloat, didn't step closer, just looked down. Calm, measured. Tyler blinked up at him, chest rising and falling, eyes wide, red with frustration. But under it, something else was forming. Shame. Noah whispered, barely audible, he could have ended it right there. And the truth was, he could have. But he didn't, because that's not what he came here to do. Frank didn't fight out of anger, he fought with restraint, and that's what made him terrifying. Tyler stayed on the mat longer than he meant to. His pride had taken the hardest fall, but no one was watching him now. All eyes had shifted, not with suspicion, with awe. Frank stood with his back slightly turned, hands at ease. No guard, no swagger, just that same unreadable calm, but calm like an ocean, not a pond. Deep, capable of storms. Master Ortega finally stepped forward, slow, deliberate. He spoke without raising his voice. "You trained. Where?" Frank looked over his shoulder. Not proud, not secretive, just matter of fact. "Long time ago. Different kind of mat." That was all he said. And somehow, it was enough. The room seemed smaller now. The silence, heavier. Even the fluorescent lights above felt dimmer. Parents weren't filming anymore. They were leaning in. Kids weren't whispering. They were staring like they were seeing a war hero disguised as a stranger. Hank nodded slowly from the bench. "That's not muscle memory. That's muscle wisdom." And somewhere inside every person watching, a strange question began to bloom. Why did he come back? And what's he really here to teach? The tension hadn't broken. It had shifted, like a storm that changed direction but still hung in the sky. Tyler stayed kneeling, shoulders low, breathing heavy. He didn't leave, but he didn't get up to fight again either. Then another figure moved. Marcus, younger, quieter, black belt, sure, but one who listened more than he talked. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate. No challenge in his eyes, only respect. Frank watched him come, unreadable. Marcus bowed his head, and then, without a word, he dropped to one knee, not from pain, from recognition. "Sensei," he said quietly. One word, one gesture, that was all. A hush fell like a blanket over the gym. Noah's eyes widened. His mother reached over and touched his arm without realizing. Even Master Ortega stood straighter, but this time not to defend, to honor. Frank didn't smile. He just gave a small nod, and for the first time he spoke not to dominate, but to invite. "Then rise, and learn the right way." And with that, the lesson truly began. Marcus rose slowly, standing just a few feet from Frank. No ego, no tension, just respect and attention. Frank didn't speak. He raised a hand, open palm, then pointed 2 fingers at Marcus's feet. A slight nod. The lesson had begun. Marcus adjusted. One foot back, one knee slightly bent. Frank stepped forward. Not fast, not even firm, just enough. He reached out and tapped Marcus's shoulder, barely a whisper of contact. Marcus shifted instinctively. His balance tilted. Frank caught him, not with force, but guidance, redirected him gently back into form. "It's not about strength," Frank finally said. "It's about where you are, before it begins." That line hung in the air. Master Ortega exhaled through his nose. He understood, deeply. Parents leaned in. Even Tyler, now seated by the wall, watched with something new in his eyes, humility. Frank stepped back, motioned again. Marcus mirrored the move. Better, sharper, grounded. And that's when the rest of the room began to realize. This wasn't just martial arts. This was memory, discipline, and war, translated into movement. Frank stepped beside Marcus again. A slow correction, a shift of the heel, a nod of approval. No words wasted, just movement with meaning. Then, a voice from the bench. Small, honest, young. "Did you ever have to hurt someone when you didn't want to?" Noah. Even Marcus paused mid-stance. The question wasn't rude, wasn't dramatic. It was real. Frank's hand froze in the air. Not tense, just still. His eyes shifted. Not toward Noah, past him. To a place far away. The gym waited. You could hear sneakers squeak as someone adjusted in their seat, and regretted the sound. Frank lowered his hand. He didn't answer at first, not with words. He just looked down at the mat, like it had held more than just feet. Then, softly, "You learned fast that winning doesn't always feel like surviving." Noah didn't speak again, but his face changed. So did the room, because now, they weren't watching a fighter, they were watching a survivor. Frank stepped slowly back to the center of the mat. His posture hadn't changed, but the weight behind it had. Marcus stood still, waiting. Noah leaned forward, eyes wide, breath shallow. Frank finally spoke again, his voice quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade in fog. "Anyone can throw a punch. The hard part is knowing when not to." The black belts looked at each other. Some nodded, slowly. Some lowered their heads. Frank raised his hand, motioned toward Marcus. "Show me the last move again. But this time, don't finish it." Marcus hesitated, then stepped forward. He moved with control, up to the final strike, and stopped short, fist hovering just inches from Frank's chest. Frank didn't move, didn't blink, just whispered, "That's the moment. Right there, where strength ends and character begins." Noah mouthed the words to himself, stunned. Even Tyler, silent in the corner, finally lowered his gaze. And, for the first time, they all understood. Frank hadn't come back to show them power. He came to show them restraint. The mat had gone still. Frank stood in the center. Marcus stepped back, quiet, steady. The moment hung in the air, unbroken. And then, Master Ortega moved, not with the authority of a coach, not with the command of rank, but with silence. And something heavier, humility. He walked toward Frank. Every footstep echoed louder than applause. The students shifted. A few sat up straighter. Even a Tyler leaned forward, sensing something bigger than ego unfolding. When Ortega reached Frank, he didn't speak. He simply reached down and untied his black belt. Gasps. Quiet, sharp gasps. Not dramatic, just real. Ortega held it in both hands. Offered it, arms extended, respectful. "I've taught here for 21 years, he said, voice soft. "But today, I remembered I'm still a student." Frank didn't reach for the belt. He raised his hand gently. "No," he said, "you didn't forget. You just stopped asking questions. And with that..." Ortega bowed, not as a formality, as thanks. Ortega stayed bowed for a second longer than protocol required, but this wasn't about formality. It was about truth. When he rose, his hands were empty, but his eyes were clearer than they'd been in years. He didn't look embarrassed. He looked lighter. The students didn't mock, didn't shift uncomfortably. Instead, they stood, one by one, not for Frank, for him, the man who'd just taught them the most important lesson of all. Even a teacher grows when they let go of knowing everything. Noah watched with his mouth slightly open. His mother, now fully present, phone long forgotten, squeezed his hand. Marcus stepped aside to make room for Ortega on the mat. No hesitation. "Tyler?" He stared at Ortega like seeing him for the first time. not as master, but as a man, one strong enough to bow when it mattered most. Frank gave Ortega a nod, not above him, beside him, and in that stillness something profound happened. The room no longer belonged to one master. It belonged to the moment, and everyone stood in it, together. The room was still. Ortega stood again, side by side with Frank now, equal not in rank, but in awareness. Frank turned finally to face the room, not to instruct, not to command, to ask. His eyes swept across parents, students, even Tyler, then settled on Noah, smallest in the room, but widest-eyed. Frank didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "What's the point of winning? If you forget who you were before the fight." The words landed heavy, not like thunder, more like a slow drumbeat in the chest. A few students blinked. A father in the back folded his arms, suddenly uncomfortable. Not from disagreement, from recognition. Noah swallowed. Marcus lowered his gaze. Even Tyler looked away, because deep down, every single person there had fought something, pushed, climbed, lashed out, and maybe forgotten themselves in the process. Frank didn't elaborate. He just let the silence work. And in that silence, everyone started to hear their own answer. The silence held. Frank didn't move, didn't explain, just waited. Like he knew someone would step into that stillness. And then Hank stood. His cane tapped the wood once, not for balance, for punctuation. He walked slowly to the edge of the mat. Every head turned. He didn't look at Frank. He looked past him, to memory. "Fallujah, 2004, he said. "My squad cleared a block no one else would touch. We were fast, precise, won the ground in 38 minutes. A few parents shifted uncomfortably. He didn't soften. But I left my best friend behind. Didn't see the wire, didn't stop moving. His jaw tightened, but his voice never cracked. We won. The headline said so, but I ain't slept right since." Frank met his eyes, just for a moment. No pity, just knowing. Hank tapped his chest once. "Victory's a strange medal. You can wear it, and still feel hollow underneath." He turned back to his bench. No applause, just truth, and the kind of silence no trophy ever earns. Hank sat back down. The bench creaked, but no one moved. Not Frank, not Ortega, not even the parents near the exit who had once checked their watches. Now, no one wanted to leave. Then, Noah stood, slow, awkward at first, his hands clenched nervously in his hoodie pocket, but his voice, it carried. "If fighting costs that much, why do we keep doing it?" Silence again, but this time it had teeth. Even Frank tilted his head, like the question had hit a nerve he didn't know was still alive. Ortega blinked. Hank stared at the floor. Marcus looked at Noah with something between pride and sadness. "Is there a way to win?" Noah asked again, "without losing yourself?" No one answered right away, because they couldn't. But the weight in the room shifted again, not downward this time, but forward. And for the first time the question didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a beginning. Frank didn't speak right away. He looked down at his hands, calloused, steady, but for a moment, they seemed older than the rest of him. Then, finally, "There was a man once," he said, "faster than me, stronger, meaner." The room leaned in. He threatened a kid, didn't care about rules, didn't care about life. Frank's jaw tightened. I stepped in, put him down hard, didn't hold back, didn't need to. He paused. A long breath, a longer silence. The boy lived. The man didn't. A few gasps. One mother covered her mouth. Noah froze. "I got medals, praise, my name in a frame. People called it justice." Frank looked up, right into Noah's eyes. "But every time I close mine, I still see the fear in that boy's face, not because of the man, because of me." The words hung there, sharp, unfiltered, and then softer. "You can win and still lose a part of yourself. The trick is learning how much of that loss you're willing to live with." Noah didn't cry, but something in him cracked. Not like glass, more like a wall giving way to sunlight. He stared at Frank, eyes wide and unblinking. He wasn't afraid. He was awake. Frank stepped closer, kneeling, slowly, so their eyes met level. "The world will tell you to be strong," Frank said, voice low. "But strength isn't how hard you hit. It's what you protect, when it would be easier to destroy." Noah nodded, just once, but it carried weight beyond his years. From the benches, a mother turned her face away, tears already forming. Even Tyler exhaled hard, like he'd been holding his breath for 10 minutes. Marcus wiped his palms against his gi. Ortega stood motionless, but you could see the emotion in his throat, tight, unspoken. And in that still moment, Frank did something simple. He reached out and placed a hand gently on Noah's shoulder. No words, just a transfer of burden, of wisdom, of peace. A teacher had arrived, but now a guardian was leaving something behind. Frank stood, not with finality, not with performance, just quietly. He looked around the room, once, slowly, as if memorizing every face, not for pride, but for peace. Ortega nodded first, not as a peer, as a student. Then Marcus bowed, deeper than required, longer than tradition. Tyler stood, unsure, then followed. Even Hank rose from his bench, straightening his spine the best he could. No cane this time, just respect. Parents didn't speak. They just held their children closer. "Noah?" He stood straighter than anyone in the room. Still no tears. Just a fire, newly lit. Frank turned toward the exit. Didn't rush, didn't look back, and when the door opened, no one moved. Because sometimes, the loudest farewell is the one no one says out loud. The door shut softly behind him, but the air stayed heavy. Changed. Something had left the room, but something bigger had been left behind. Not a technique, not a title, a truth. The door clicked shut behind Frank, but the echo didn't fade. It hung there, like smoke after a long fire. Tyler stood, arms crossed tight, jaw clenched like he was holding back something sharper than regret. Then, finally, "I was wrong." Ortega turned. So did Marcus. Even Hank raised a brow. Tyler stepped toward the center of the mat. Not defiant, not broken, honest. "I thought I knew what strength looked like. Turns out, I've just been loud." No applause. Just a nod from Marcus. And something deeper in Ortega's eyes. Then, Noah stepped forward. Still quiet. Still lit. He walked to the center, next to Tyler, and bowed. Deep. "I want to start over," he said. "For real this time." Ortega looked at the two of them, and smiled, for the first time that day. He walked toward the front of the class, picked up a white belt, held it up. "Then we all start together." And just like that, the dojo wasn't Frank's anymore. But what he left behind? It had only just begun. Training resumed, but it didn't feel like before. Movements were quieter, more focused. Even the air felt cleaner. No more swagger, no more proving. Just learning. On the benches, parents sat a little differently. Less like spectators, more like witnesses. One mother turned to another, tears drying in the corners of her eyes. "I brought him here to learn discipline," she whispered, nodding toward her son. "But I think I'm the one who needed it." Near the back, Hank leaned on his cane again, then stood, and without being asked, he bowed. Not to anyone in particular, but to everything. That's when Noah did something no one expected. He walked to the wall, unclipped the photo of past instructors, and taped a blank sheet right in the middle. Marcus raised a brow. "What's that for?" Noah smiled. "For him, the one who didn't come to be remembered, but changed everything anyway." And somehow, that empty sheet said more than any frame ever could. The sun was lower now, not quite sunset, but that soft golden hour where shadows grow longer and lighter. Frank walked down the sidewalk, hands in his coat pockets. No bag, no gear, no destination announced, but he didn't look lost. He looked settled. The world around him buzzed. Cars, kids, wind chimes. But Frank moved like a man who'd just put something heavy down after carrying it too long. A passing jogger gave him a quick glance, didn't recognize him, didn't need to. Frank didn't walk like someone who wanted to be seen. He walked like someone who had finally seen himself. From his pocket he pulled out something small, folded paper. He opened it. A child's drawing. 2 stick figures, one small, one tall, both bowing. In crayon it read, "Thank you, Sensei. Noah." Frank smiled, just barely. But it wasn't the kind that faded quickly. It was the kind that heals. And with that, he kept walking, but this time with the wind at his back. The next morning, the parking lot was full before sunrise. No music, no fanfare, just early footsteps, quiet voices, G-tops pressed and folded like Sunday clothes. Inside, the mats had been cleaned, not just swept, washed by hand. Noah arrived with his mom, holding the same blank drawing he'd hung on the wall, but this time he carried it like a banner, not a memory. Ortega stood by the entrance, not commanding, just welcoming, like someone greeting guests to a family reunion. Marcus was already stretching. Tyler? He helped a white belt tie his knot right. And Hank? He brought coffee, for everyone. One by one, students lined up, no assigned order, just presence. Ortega stepped forward. "We used to bow before class," he said, "out of habit, out of respect." He looked across the room, then down at his bare hands. "Today, we bow to each other, because none of us are here to fight. We're here to remember why we shouldn't have to." And with that, they bowed. Together, like they were finally ready to learn. Years earlier, Frank, just 13. Skinny, silent, and angry at things he didn't have names for. The world had already taken too much. A father who never came back from the war. A mother who worked 3 jobs and forgot birthdays. And a voice inside him that never felt loud enough to matter. He walked into the dojo wearing shoes too big and eyes too tired. The instructor, older, slower, looked at him without smiling. "You here to fight?" the man asked. Frank nodded. The man pointed to a broom. "Then clean." Frank blinked, didn't move. "Before you learn how to hurt," the man said, "you clean what others left behind." So Frank swept. Quiet. For weeks. No gloves, no GI, just silence and the sound of dust moving across a wooden floor. And then, one night, after all the others left, the instructor stepped onto the mat, gestured. Frank followed. No punches, no blocks, just breath. Slow, controlled, alive. That was the first lesson, and it stuck deeper than any scar ever would. The dojo was quiet, not empty, just centered. A new boy stood near the entrance. Small frame, nervous eyes, one shoe untied. No one pushed him, no one gave him a welcome speech, except Noah. He walked toward the kid, slow and steady, not like a senior, like a friend. The boy flinched as Noah approached. Noah stopped, smiled just a little, then pointed to the broom leaning near the back wall. "Before you learn how to punch," he said, "you learn how to clean." The boy blinked. "Clean?" he asked. Noah nodded. "People leave things behind. Sometimes dust, sometimes pain." The boy didn't understand fully, but he moved toward the broom anyway. And just like that, it began again. Ortega watched from a distance, eyes glassy. Marcus exhaled. Tyler smiled. No one told Noah to say it. No one rehearsed it. But, somehow, Frank's voice had survived. Not in echoes, but in actions. The broom clicked softly as the new kid swept. Every motion awkward but honest. Noah didn't correct him. He just stood nearby, present, like Frank once did. Then Ortega stepped forward, holding something in his hand. A belt, but not black, not brown, not even white. This one was blank. No stripes, no tags, just simple cotton, washed soft by time. "This wasn't part of the curriculum," Ortega said. "It was never meant to be awarded." He looked at Noah. "Until today." The room stilled. Noah's eyes widened, but he didn't move. Ortega walked up, placed the belt in Noah's hands. "You reminded us," he said, voice cracking, "that being first in line doesn't mean you've arrived. Sometimes it means you go back and help someone else start." Noah didn't bow. He hugged the belt. The new kid looked up, unsure why everyone was quiet. Noah turned, knelt, and tied the boy's shoes. No applause, just something sacred in the silence. Because in that moment, a belt wasn't just cloth. It was legacy. The dojo lights dimmed naturally with the setting sun. No one turned them off. They just let the day finish its bow. Noah placed the belt on a small shelf near the blank photo. Not behind glass, just resting. Marcus swept the mat. Tyler straightened the gear rack. Parents whispered soft goodbyes, but no one really wanted to leave. The new boy sat by the wall, still holding the broom. He didn't need directions anymore, just time. Outside, the wind carried late summer air. The kind that feels like something's ending, but also beginning again. Frank wasn't there, but somehow he was everywhere. In the way Ortega paused before speaking, in the way Hank lingered a second longer, in the way Noah looked at others before looking at himself. And then, just before the screen fades to black, Noah turns to the new kid and says quietly, "You don't have to fight to be strong. But if you ever must, make sure you remember who you are when it's over." A final bow, a soft smile, and silence. The kind that means everything was heard. Have you ever met someone who changed your life without ever needing to teach you a single word? Comment their name, or just leave a if you're still searching. And if you've ever learned what real strength means without a single punch thrown, share your story below. Let this video be more than a moment. Let it be a mirror.